Hi, my name is Sergio Iuregas. I'm a registered professional archaeologist specializing in Spanish colonial and Tejano archaeology. I have worked for the Texas and Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Offices, reviewing large complex federal undertakings similar to the Hemisphere Park Area Redevelopment Corporation project. I have worked for Harvard University Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology in the Native American Repatriation Office. I taught historic preservation law courses for lawyers attending Continuing Legal Education International conferences. I have 27 years' experience in cultural heritage management. My archaeological field experience includes documenting the Acequia Pajalache for the city of San Antonio, 2 separate locations where General Zachary Taylor built his historic military road along the Rio Grande for the Mexican-American War, and numerous Spanish colonial archaeological sites and their cultural material artifact assemblages from Spanish ranchos along the Rio Grande at Falcon Reservoir when the water levels were 52 feet below normal in 1996. I have prepared this short presentation of our Historic Resources Report research to help the Hispanic Heritage Center of Texas promote and preserve one of the oldest roads in San Antonio. I'm here today to present Retracing La Bahia Road, Revitalizing Our Hispanic Heritage. Let's go over the facts. The 1968 Hemisphere Plaza was built over La Bahia Road, and we still use it today, yet we do not recognize it. We can recognize it by its historic road names. During the Spanish colonial period, it was known as Camino de la Bahia del Espíritu Santo, and during the Republic of Mexico period, it was known as Old La Bahia Road. And then during the Republic of Texas period, it changed names to Goliad Street, because La Bahia had also changed names to Goliad. During the early Texas statehood period, it was also known as Goliad Street, but often referred to as La Bahia Road, in much the same way that we refer to East Cesar Chavez as the old Durango Boulevard. Today, in 1968 and the present, the road is known as Hemisphere Plaza Way and East Cesar E. Chavez Boulevard. Here is how we find La Bahia Road today. We look at historic maps and modern aerials. First, we're going to take a look at topographic features, places that anyone in San Antonio would easily recognize, such as the Big Bend in the San Antonio River, San Fernando Cathedral Plaza, Alamo Plaza, and the Acequia Madre, which was known as Alamo Ditch in historic times. Next, we're going to look at key features, which can be roads whose names haven't changed over time for the most part. We're going to look at Barrera Street, La Vaca Street, Villita Street, Nueva Street, near the H Park project area, and then further east we're going to look at Hackberry Street, Mesquite Street, Olive Street, as well as Virginia Boulevard and Pine Street, and Aransas Avenue, all within Hemisphere Plaza Way and East Cesar E. Chavez Boulevard context, as well as the H Park project area context, the Hemisphere Park Area Redevelopment Corporation project area. So let's get oriented. We can retrace La Bahia Road and see how it becomes Goliad Street, then Hemisphere Plaza Way, East Cesar E. Chavez Boulevard over time. We will look at general historic maps and historic subdivision plat maps. First, we will look at early historic maps and see well-known San Antonio places. Next, we will look at a modern-day aerial map of San Antonio and focus on the well-known places and roads. We will put historic subdivision plat maps over modern-day aerial photograph of San Antonio and see how they say Goliad Road is La Bahia Road. We will also see historic written evidence that says Goliad Road is La Bahia Road. Then we will see how La Bahia Road turns south, leading out of town, heading for the city of Goliad. In closing, we will learn what the Texas Historical Commission thinks, what this all means, and possible resolutions that can bring more tourist dollars to San Antonio. The first historic map we're going to look at is the Captain Don Luis Antonio Menchaca's 1764 map of San Antonio. We chose this particular map because it's the earliest version of San Antonio that shows some of the familiar places. We're going to focus in on this flashing red rectangular area. As we zoom in on the 1764 map of San Antonio, the first thing we notice is that the map is oriented towards the east and north is pointing to the left. We notice the first familiar place, which is the San Fernando Plaza, then the Alamo Plaza, as well as the Big Bend in the San Antonio River. We also note that the acequia is drawn on this map, and we also see La Bahia Road with its original name, the Camino de la Bahia del Espíritu Santo. We're going to focus in on this flashing light blue rectangular area to emphasize where we're at on a modern aerial. But how do we go from a map such as this to an actual modern aerial? Let's see these familiar places and well-known roads on a modern aerial map. As we look at the modern aerial map of San Antonio, we notice that it is oriented towards the east and north is pointing towards the left. San Fernando Cathedral is the yellow rectangular flashing area down at the south, and Alamo is north of that, as well as the Big Bend in the San Antonio River. It's followed by the Acequia Madre that's going through the H Park project area. Then we see this green flashing line showing the alignment of La Bahia Road as it exists today, as it was present in the Spanish colonial period as well. Then we see the H Park project area that's outlined in red. What we're going to do is focus in on this blue flashing triangular area to get further oriented with some of the key features, such as roads. So let's take a look here and let's focus on some historic maps. The second historic map we're going to look at is Augustus Koch bird's eye view of the city of San Antonio in 1873. The first thing we notice is that it is oriented towards the southeast. Next, we're going to point out San Fernando Plaza area, as well as the Alamo Plaza area and the Big Bend in the San Antonio River. We also have La Bahia Road outlined in green going from the city and leading out of town. We're going to zero in and focus on this blue flashing triangular area and point out some of the key features that we discussed, which are some of the roads. So let's zoom into this and take a look. As we can see as we zoom in, this triangular area is becoming more rectangular, and it is the actual area that has become the H Park project area. The first thing we're going to notice is the Big Bend in the San Antonio River in relation to the acequia, and La Bahia Road is present as well. The green flashing line shows the alignment, and notice that at this point in time the road is known as Goliad Street. We're going to look at these key features now, which is La Vaca Street, Barrera Street, Villita Street, and finally Nueva Street. We're going to take a look at these in the context of a modern aerial and go over all this information to get further oriented and point out these key features. Here we have a modern aerial of San Antonio, and notice immediately that it is oriented towards the north. We have the Big Bend in the San Antonio River, we have Alamo Plaza, we have the acequia, as well as the H Park project area outlined in red, and the green line represents the Goliad La Bahia Road. Then we go to Barrera Street, La Vaca Street, Villita Street, and East Nueva Street that we got from the Koch's bird's eye view map that gets us oriented. Notice this flashing purple line. The city blocks below the purple line are not platted, and everything above it was in the town tract. We're going to show you historic plat records that focus on three areas. The first one primarily here in the H Park project area, flashing in the rectangular blue area. Then we're going to move east of I-35 and look at the second set of evidence that we have for some track records, 43. And then east of track 43, we're going to look at another track record. So let's take a quick look at those particular areas as they appear overlaid onto the overall general map. As we zoom in on this modern aerial map of San Antonio, we notice that it is still oriented pointing north. The green flashing line is the La Bahia Road, and you can see underneath that the alignment is still in place since its Spanish colonial placement. We're looking at it in the context of the H Park project area and the 3 plat records that we have. The first one is an 1879 plat book document that's within the actual Hemisphere Park area. The next one is an 1872 plat book that is part of Block 43. And just east of that is the 1876 plat book that we will go over in detail. First, let's take a look at each of these on their own basis and then lay them over this historic map so you can get a closer look at what we're talking about. The first plat book record comes in 1879 that was found in Survey Book 1 on page 178. Immediately we see our familiar key places, Villita Street and Nueva Street, as well as the Acequia, which here is listed as Alamo Ditch, and the La Bahia Road that is documented as Goliad Street. What does this map look like when it's overlaid onto the modern aerial? As we see here, the first plat record is overlaid on the modern aerial, and we see Villita Street and Nueva Street, as well as the Alamo Ditch, and notice underneath the canopy is much larger because it has access to the water. We're also looking at Goliad Street is also now known as Hemisphere Plaza Way, and the green flashing line shows the alignment in better clarity. The next plat record is an 1872 plat record that was found in Plat Book 2, page 31. First off, we notice that Mesquite Street is to the left and Hackberry Street is to the right, and we have Old La Bahia Road in the south at a diagonal between the two streets. This is Block 43, and it's important to recognize because on South 8th Street, its northern boundary, that eventually changes over time. The thing about these plat records is they can be re-subdivided. Here is what that record looks like laid over the modern aerial. Notice that 8th Street has now become Virginia Boulevard, and Mesquite Street is still labeled as Mesquite Street on the modern aerial. Hackberry Street in historic times is still Hackberry Street today, and Old La Bahia Road is underneath and laid over East Cesar E. Chavez Boulevard. Notice that it's Block 43 again, because I mentioned these maps could be re-subdivided, and that's precisely what we found. We found Adams and Wicks re-subdivision of Block 43 on Goliad Road in 1891, and here we see that 8th Street has now become Virginia Street. We see Mesquite Street on the left, Hackberry Street on the right, and the southern boundary is Goliad Road. This is still Block 43. Old La Bahia Road has become Goliad Road. Did you catch that? As we can see here, the first plat record is laid next to the re-subdivision, and we have Block 43 on both records. Old La Bahia Road is now Goliad Road. The next plat record comes in 1876 from Plat Book 2 on page 54. Again, we have Old La Bahia Road and Hackberry Street, and now we have Olive Street. So let's take a look at this map overlaid on a modern aerial. As we overlay this map on a modern aerial, we see that, again, Hackberry Street at that time is still labeled as Hackberry Street, the same as Olive Street back then is now labeled as Olive Street, and Old La Bahia Road is still seen in alignment with East Cesar E. Chavez that's going through a block that has actually been developed, and we've lost the road in this particular location. I want to transition over to a larger view of the city of San Antonio. This is a map entered according to the Act of Congress in the year 1888 by J.J. Olson Jr. in the Office of the Librarian of Congress at Washington. The city published its historic plat map at that time with all of the land tracts north of Aransas and all of the unplatted area south of Aransas, which is that purple line that we showed you earlier. Let's zoom in and take a look at that. As we zoom in on this 1889 City of San Antonio map, we notice that the purple line shows the city blocks below are not platted and everything above it is the actual town track. We have the green flashing line as La Bahia Road showing the alignment, and up in the H Park project area the road is labeled as Goliad Road, as well as being labeled Goliad Road as it heads out of town. We're going to focus in on block 43 as a reference point to this other location that's flashing in red, where we found written survey notes in 1881 that show Block 2, Goliad Road and Walnut Street was La Bahia Road. As we can see here, this 1881 written survey in Subdivision Civil Engineer, Survey Book 1, page 382, the author labeled Goliad Street as La Bahia Road in much the same way that we refer to East Cesar Chavez, that used to be Old Durango Boulevard. As we zoom in, we can actually read October 20th, 1881, field notes of a survey made for John Burton on lot number 1, block 2, at the southwest intersection of Goliad Street, La Bahia Road, and Walnut Street. As we can see here, elements of the H Park Master Plan on page 59, we note that there is a streetcar plan that will go straight down the middle of La Bahia Road that will cause adverse effects to this historic national trail. Here on page 41, the elements of the H Park Master Plan show the streetcar going down La Bahia Road, as well as a proposed reestablishment of a street grid. This in turn will also have an adverse effect on the historic property. The Texas Historical Commission, also known as the Texas State Historic Preservation Office, has made a determination as of May 13, 2013 that the Southern Hemisphere Park redevelopment was an eligible National Register Hemisphere district. The THC stated that the southern portion of the Hemisphere Park is an eligible National Register district incorporating both 19th century resources that predate the fair and buildings and structures designed and built in the 1960s. Their determination of eligibility was based on the significance of standing structures regardless of any changes to the landscape. A more thorough evaluation of the landscape was necessary and essential. The THC also called for a more definitive northern boundary may be delineated only after comparing a larger scale current map to historic maps in order to determine which sites at the periphery have enough integrity to be included in a district. Finally, the THC recommended a memorandum of agreement to resolve negative effects to historic resources. So what does La Bahia Road mean for the H Park project area? Well, the National Park Service published El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail Comprehensive Management Plan and Environmental Assessment in September 2011. The Hispanic Heritage Center of Texas is preparing a historical research report that comports with THC's request for a more thorough evaluation of the landscape, comparing a larger scaled current map to historic maps in terms of La Bahia Road and Acequia Madre. Historical written record evidence from the City of San Antonio's Office of the City Clerk, Municipal Archives and Records proves the National Park Service's La Bahia Bear Road and trail segment is present in San Antonio's Goliad Street. Therefore, Hemisphere Plaza Way, East Cesar E. Chavez Boulevard, is part of La Bahia Road and trail segment, a contributing resource to the National Register El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail. The presence of the El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail, La Bahia Bear Road and trail segment within H Park is a threshold that triggers Section 106 informed consultation with the National Park Service as a federal agency reviewer for the H-Park undertaking prior to the General Services Administration's transfer of the federal historic properties to the City of San Antonio. The Hispanic Heritage Center of Texas is a recognized consulting party with the National Park Service and the General Services Administration's undertakings. Resolving negative adverse effects. H-Park can comply with the Texas Historical Commission's recommendation for a memorandum of agreement and negotiate with other consulting parties to resolve H-Park's adverse effects it is proposing. H-Park can also conduct historic American building surveys, where more in-depth historic building survey will document historic building footprints as recommended by the Texas Historical Commission. H-Park will also conduct historic American engineering record surveys, where scaled engineering drawings of buildings and structures include cross-sectional drawings of historic roads like La Bahia and canals like Acequia Madre, and illustrate construction methods. Another resolution strategy is having the Tejano Living History Museum, which is part of the Hispanic Heritage Center of Texas, within the H-Park Development Project area as a possible venue for trail interpretation. The National Park Service has recognized the Hispanic Heritage Center of Texas as an El Camino Real de las Tejas National Historic Trail partner, an entity qualified to interpret the historic trail. So let's take a fresh look at the facts. The 1968 Hemisphere Plaza was built over La Bahia Road, and it still exists in place today, and it's retraceable. As stakeholders in the Hemisphere Redevelopment Project, we can now recognize La Bahia Road as a valuable cultural heritage asset. And finally, La Bahia Road is an untapped currency that is exchangeable for tourist dollars. I want to thank you for watching this presentation. If you are interested in helping the City of San Antonio preserve La Bahia Road within the Hemisphere Park Area Redevelopment Corporation project, you can go to the Hispanic Heritage Center of Texas webpage at www.hispanicheritagecenteroftexas.org and see what you can do next. You are encouraged to send a letter to the National Park Service and the General Services Administration requesting that your organization, or as an individual, be recognized as an additional consulting party within the Section 106 consultation process outlined in the National Historic Preservation Act. Example letters are posted for your convenience. Again, thank you very much. Goodbye.